Good morning, everybody. I'll give a description of myself. I am a white woman in my early 40s. I'm wearing a burgundy top and skirt. Yes. So thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you very much, Robert, for having me here today. I'm so thrilled to be here to give you a little kind of glimpse of Marie Antoinette style, this exhibition which opens in September this year, and on such a beautiful day at the beautiful Barber as well. So as Robert said, we are really at the beginning, so it does make sense for this paper to come first because we have spent quite a lot of time researching scent, and I'll be talking about why scent is so important to this exhibition. But because we are still in progress, you're not going to hear so much of the technical details. You'll be hearing more of the curatorial and intellectual sort of rationale, really, for including scent in this exhibition. So, as I said, in September this year, the V&A is hosting the UK's first ever exhibition on Marie Antoinette. And it's exploring the origins and revivals of the style shaped by arguably, we think, the most fashionable queen in history. So it considers Marie Antoinette, who is a figure who was a fashion icon in her own time, and also how the dress and the interiors that she modeled and adopted have had this really extraordinarily lasting legacy, this influence on over 250 years of design, because we are the V&A, with a particular focus on fashion. So the exhibition is going to bring together a range of the most exquisite objects belonging to Marie Antoinette, alongside the most beautiful, fine and decorative objects that her legacy has inspired, to explore how and why Marie Antoinette has provided such a constant source of inspiration up to this day. So you can see here, this is on the left, and this is one of our 18th century French sac-backs, or robe à la française, in a silk chiné, which is very close to some of the chiné silks that Marie Antoinette had in her wardrobe book of 1782, if you're familiar with it. And then on the right, this is, of course, the famous portrait of Marie Antoinette by Vigée Lebrun with the rose, which is currently hangs in the Petit Trianon. So why scent? Well, one of the greatest challenges for an exhibition on this subject, on Marie Antoinette, on a French subject, in London, in an exhibition hall in South Kensington, is of course evoking the atmosphere and the setting of the Palace of Versailles. How do you do that in an exhibition hall, in a Victorian exhibition hall in London, in South Ken? Especially for those of our visitors who've never visited Versailles, because we anticipate that there will be people who haven't been. So obviously the visitor will be surrounded by her objects, by the objects that belong to Marie Antoinette, and we've made a really a focus to emphasize the objects that reflect her personal style. So not just the sort of the official style, but the style that she herself endorsed, commissioned, was involved with and influenced, and her portraits. And there will obviously also be AV as well. So there will be a soundscape and there will be film, all those elements that help to sort of immerse the visitor. But how do you really take the visitor back to the world of Marie Antoinette effectively? And so immediately we wanted to do this with an olfactory installation, because we know, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, we know that as Dauphine and then later as Queen, Marie Antoinette embraced and inhabited a highly fragrant world. So a world that was far more perfumed than we live today and than we can imagine. During her reign, men and women liberally perfumed themselves. They also perfumed their fashion accessories. So you may know about the connection between the development of perfumers and scent and scented gloves. That's where a lot of it began. And then also they scented their interiors. So looking back on this period, on the period of Marie Antoinette after the Revolution, one former courtier said, in the last century, women were so much more perfumed than today because pomade and powder were excessively perfumed. So pomade, you will know, is the sort of the balm, the product that was used to set and scent the coiffure, the hairstyle. And for the same reason, men were as well. In her palaces, Marie Antoinette was surrounded by visual representations of scent. So if you consider the interiors of Versailles and her rooms, her private apartments and her state apartments, there are flowers everywhere. They spill out across the silk cladding. They are on all the marquetry furniture, on her porcelain surfaces, the painted moldings of her apartments. And then in her portraits, as she is in the one that I just showed, she is almost always holding a rose or a little posy, some sort of scented aromatic selection of lily of the valley or narcissus. And of course, her gardens at the Petit Trianon as well exhaled the sweet scent of thousands of different varieties of flowers, so hyacinths, violets, roses, jasmine, orange blossom, and fragrant lilac. And one courtier recalled, the air was full of balmy fragrance. But of course, there were malodors too, and at Versailles, Marie Antoinette shared her palace with over 1,000 courtiers and servants who resided across 226 apartments, but there were many thousands more in the adjoining court buildings, and still more bodies passing through daily to work in or visit the court. So it was notoriously an overcrowded chateau, an overcrowded residence, and this really did create some problems. When he visited in 1767, Benjamin Franklin was astonished by the combination of both great splendor and squalid neglect, and he commented on the smell, as did many people who were visiting Versailles at that time. And the smell was a combination of things. The kitchen hands threw waste directly out of the windows, and this created, according to one courtier's report, an indecent stench. The courtyards were constantly befouled by the sheer numbers of carriage horses coming and going, and the waste channels didn't drain correctly, so this would collect, and then the water would be stagnant, and this would, just continue to contribute to this truly, as one courtier said, unbearable smell. And that was the year that Marie Antoinette became queen, that they had this problem with the unbearable smell. And then there was also the haze of soot that was leaching from chimneys, from lanterns and candles, and then most importantly, the emptying of latrines and the odors that escaped from the chateau's 29 cesspits. So whenever they emptied the cesspits, the whole court had to vacate. It was not possible to actually stay at Versailles when they were emptying the cesspits because it was so terrible. So it's not surprising that scent was something that preoccupied Marie Antoinette and the servants, everyone at court really. So as you can see, scent was something that played a vital role at her court. And it wasn't just to mask odors, like the odors I've just described. It wasn't just also for the perceived medicinal and purifying properties of scent, which were also a consideration, but for the sensory and therapeutic pleasures that scent generated, which were, at that time, as they are now, widely recognized. And there was this undeniable link between scent and its ability to convey an individual's power, status, and allure. And the commercial structure of manufacturing and distributing scent and cosmetics and perfume to this world was also pretty advanced and quite professionalized. It sort of foregrounds really the scent industry today. The court was supplied by a handful of perfumers, but there were 250 perfumers operating in Paris alone. And most of them were based on the Rue Saint-Honoré, which is still, as you know, a luxury shopping address in Paris today, so very little has changed. But there were also apothecaries who are providing an overwhelming number of products. Hygiene standards were improving. There were advances in dentistry, which some historians have linked to the emergence of the smile in portraits of the late 18th century, because finally people could show their teeth. What did they smell like, though? What sort of scents were they wearing? Perfumers boasted of exotic, in inverted commas, scents and ingredients, but in reality, the majority of the production at this time was based on European-derived ingredients and scents found locally, so rose, lavender, jasmine, citrus, carnation, lilac, together with orange blossom, tuberose, acacia, botanicals, and citrus fruits, and these formed the basis of most of the production for people like Marie Antoinette, particularly for scented waters, which formed the cornerstone of the toilette. So you can see on the left, this is one of the bills from one of the perfumers who supplied the court, and you can see the different powders, including purging powders and other products, but everything was highly scented. And then on the right, you can see in the middle that gilded crystal bottle is one of Marie Antoinette's scent bottles, which survives. On the right is her pomade pot with her monogram on it, her gilded monogram, which was ubiquitous at this time. This is a really fascinating example of early modern branding, where she applied her monogram to everything from her personal objects, but also to her interiors as well. And then down the bottom, you can see the French pavilion in the gardens of the Petit Trianon, because we have these extraordinary records of the flowers that were planted and that bloomed in the Petit Trianon, very accurate archival records, so that we know what the gardens would have smelled like. I'm showing the bill and the objects because part of what we're doing in the exhibition, in addition to having an olfactory installation, is to also have the scent products themselves, so to have the objects that belonged to Marie Antoinette, which housed scent, which were the vessels for scent. So if you're curious to know what Marie Antoinette smelled like, Marie Antoinette used the lavender water that was made by nuns of a Paris convent, and she also, in an early example of sort of mindfulness, she used orange flower water as well as a calming scent, so that was something you'd apply if you wanted to calm down. And she also favored rose water-based scents as well, and rose-scented pomades for her hair as well. And she even bought pomades that came from England, because as you'll know, this was the period, the height of Anglomania, and she was very interested to know what English people were using in terms of cosmetics and scents as well. So she ordered some from England too. So as I mentioned, that's her pomade pot with the monogram, and these were highly fragranced, even if they were just, they weren't actually supposed to be scented waters. All cosmetics were scented, so pomades and rouge and powder as well. And I mentioned hygiene standards. This is Marie Antoinette's bathroom, which is in her private apartment at Versailles, which was designed by Richard Mique, who was responsible for many of her beautiful interiors, and which is a bathroom fit for a water nymph. It has these extraordinary iconography of coral and pearls and dolphins, you know, the most beautiful setting for a bath. But she didn't get to enjoy it for very long, because it was completed 1788, 1789, which you'll know is the year of the revolution. So she sadly didn't get to use this one as much as she probably would have liked. But you can see the bath that they still have in there. And in actual fact, the hygiene standards were pretty good at this time. She used to have a bath once a week, and the general recommendation at this time was to have a bath every 7 to 10 days. And then the days that she didn't have a bath, she would still have a wash. Her ladies would help her to wash her legs. That's what her lady-in-waiting says. I think that might be a euphemism for sort of, you know, other areas too. But so she was, you know, she was very conscious of hygiene, and she was very clean by 18th century standards as well. And I mentioned the scenting of products because this was something else that really contributed to the scents and the atmosphere of scent at this time. You can see in these two portraits, the one on the right is the Viennese portrait of Marie Antoinette. This is by François Hubert Drouet, and it shows her age 17. So this is her the year before she became queen, and you can see just how excessively powdered and rouged she is. And this was, you know, common practice. This was part of the etiquette and protocol of the French court at Versailles, and this was something that she was mercilessly teased for when her brother came to visit her, because he came from Vienna, and he couldn't believe the amount of rouge and powder she was wearing. But these were very scented products, and so I think it's interesting to look at these portraits where you can actually see the clear delineation of powder along the temple as well, and the highly powdered hair too, and hair powder was also scented. And on the left is the portrait by Militz, who was a Viennese painter, and this shows her aged 15. Actually, I might just stay on here. So these are some of the scents that we were thinking about in the exhibition, about recreating the Malodors that I mentioned, the scents of the garden, and then also these scents of cosmetics. And we have the recipe of the rouge that Marie Antoinette used, because in 1783 she gave her endorsement to the rouge that was made by the valet of one of her friends, which she had also used. And if you're interested, it contained French safflower, which yielded shades of cherry red and pink, and then this was boiled for 24 hours with chalk and oil and water to create rouge, basically. The scent bottle that I showed is from her 1788 toilette case, and we know that scent was very particular to the individual at this time, in the same way that people today talk about having a signature scent. Marie Antoinette recycled some of her scent bottles. She sent them to her sister. And so she said she gave very firm instructions that all the residual scent should be removed and emptied, because she knew that her sister would want to use her own scents. She wouldn't want to use the scents that Marie Antoinette was using. And then the final touch in the creation of an atmosphere fit for a queen was the scenting of her interiors. So this was obviously the most fragrant part of Marie Antoinette's world. And this could be done really in all manner of ways, because perfumes were disseminated both in potpourri, in a vase or a vessel filled with aromatics, or with scented sachets, or essences that were diffused in a bain-marie, or scented lozenges that were burnt in a cassolette. And a cassolette was a perfume burner based on the antique, the Roman sort of model, the vessel. So it was derived from tripod vases, and those were used in ancient Rome, ancient Greece, to light interiors, but also to burn perfumes. And they became hugely fashionable in the 18th century at the height of the taste for the antique. So Marie Antoinette even has a portrait, which I'm not showing you, but she even has a portrait of herself depicted burning perfumes and burning incenses with a flaming cassolette. And actually, we're including in the exhibition one of her perfume burners as well. So an indication of how instrumental and ubiquitous scent and the burning of scent became in interiors is illustrated by the fact that she even incorporates them into the decoration of her interiors. So you can see in some of the gilded moldings of her interior apartments at Versailles, you can actually see scent burners are included in part of the decoration. And she did the same thing with the painted decoration of her boudoir at Fontainebleau as well, where she has, in an extraordinary conceit, miniature three-dimensional scent burners that are painted but are capable of releasing real scent as well, that really sort of recalls some of the olfactory installations like the one upstairs and like the other ones that the speakers are going to be talking about today. And then finally, in her Belvedere Folly in the Petit Trianon as well, where she used to have musical concerts and entertainments, the painted arabesques there also show scent burners, show perfume burners. And so you would be looking at painted scent burners while smelling scent and then looking out at the scented garden beyond. So it was this extraordinary kind of experience. So all of this is to say that Marie Antoinette lived in perfumed palaces, and that this was something we really wanted to show in the exhibition, along with the objects, some of which I've shown you, relating to her and scent. So we really struggled, I have to say, because the V&A has never mounted an exhibition, or is that 10 or 5? 10, okay. The V&A has never mounted an exhibition before using scent. And it's a huge organization. You know, conservation is absolutely key. The welfare, the custody of the objects in our care is absolutely key. And so we looked at some of the examples that we had seen where scent was used really successfully. And if you look at the slide on the far right, this is an exhibition that was held in Australia, and it was called Treasures from the Palace, Treasures from Versailles. And it was a loan exhibition, a complete loan exhibition that came from Versailles to Australia. And if you can imagine, I mean, I was thinking, you know, that South Kensington is about as far removed from Versailles as you can get. Australia, Canberra is even further. So how were they going to, again, evoke Versailles for their visitors? And they did it through the use of an immersive scent experience. They recreated Louis XIV's cologne using the recipe and the perfume house, Francis Curgent. And they used a nebulizer, so they disseminated scent using quite a big machine to do it with refills. And it was a contained experience, because this is the main problem that we've had at the V&A, is that we don't want to use perfume oils that can then transfer and be absorbed by vulnerable objects. You know, we don't want our textiles or our historic dress to absorb these, or sculpture or anything else really that has a porous surface. And so what they had done was they contained it within glass doors, and they had an extractor fan because their building is a modern building. They were able to redirect the extraction so that you could walk into the beginning of the exhibition, the lobby, and just be immersed in this absolute cloud of Louis XIV's cologne. And then you could go through those doors into the exhibition, and none of the scent would carry through with you because it would be being extracted. And it was a really beautifully done. We couldn't do this because we have a Victorian building and we don't have that kind of air conditioning extraction kind of technology. So we were sort of, for me, I felt like an immersive scent experience is so magical, but we could see with sort of repeated conversations that we had with the conservators and curators, both at the V&A and also at the National Gallery of Australia as an example, that we couldn't do that. We'd also seen as well the Viges Le Brun exhibition in Paris. I don't know if anyone saw that. And they did this wonderful thing again where they recreated the scent of the roses in all the portraits of Viges Le Brun's portraits that are in the exhibition. So that before you went into the exhibition, you first had this beautiful kind of scented rose moment as well. And then the other exhibition that I had seen was the one on the left, which is at the Musée de la Chasse in Paris. So this is a museum of hunting, and they had done a partnership with Trudon, who is it is the oldest continuously in operation for 300 years. It was the original supplier of scents and candles to the court, to the French court, and they did this collaboration with the museum where they recreated some of the scents associated with horses. So they had, kind of stables, and they had manure, and they had, because malodors are a good foil to the pleasant odors, and the research has shown that actually visitors respond to bad smells and enjoy smelling bad smells. And as one of the researchers told me, a lot of commercial perfumes actually include a fecal note, which people aren't aware of, but there is quite often something fecal or musky in a lot of the scents that we wear, that you and I wear today. So I thought that was a really interesting combination of pleasant scents, but also malodors as well. So we looked at that too, and that wasn't immersive. That was scent contained in vessels. So I think one of the speakers is going to be talking about something similar, where you had scented crystals. So you have beads that are impregnated with scent, and then again, this is optional, because a lot of the research we did, and we consulted Eau d'Europe, who are a European academic body looking at scent in museums, showed that there are people who are allergic to scent, there are people who don't enjoy scent or highly fragranced experiences, and we were told by colleagues, that there had been reactions to the scent, not allergic reactions, but as in people said, I don't want to smell this. And so one of the other things that we had come across was unscented days, having a day where the scent was turned off and you didn't have to experience it if you didn't want to. So these were some of the models that we'd looked at. And so, in short, because I'm afraid I can't release more information about what it is exactly we're doing, you're going to have to come. You're going to have to come in September, I hope you will, to see what it is that we've done. But I hope this explains or explores for you the rationale for including scent. We felt that it was absolutely imperative to have scent in this exhibition, given the world that Marie Antoinette inhabited and how much she herself used scent as well.